Welcome to the Diabetes Revolution podcast with Dr. Sarah Townley, the type 2 diabetes coach, clinical pharmacist, and mom of 7 angels. You don't have to struggle and fight with your blood sugars for the rest of your life. I'm here to teach you the skills you need to control and even reverse this disease. There is such a thing as getting off your meds and creating a future free from diabetes. And you can have it too. Let's get down to business. Hello, my wonderful Diabetes Revolution family. This is Sarah, your host, back for another podcast. And I'm sure you guys have been missing me and wanting an update. So of course, I will give you the obligatory update of my life. It's very exciting. We have had no house sale yet. A couple offers came in last week, so that was kind of cool. The most exciting thing that has happened is that my oldest son got a driver's license and then had his first not so serious car accident. That was earlier this week, and it was such an awesome learning experience, you guys. I just want to demonstrate real quick for you the power of what I teach in this podcast of awareness and intention coming into all areas of your life. This skill that I teach you of how to watch your mind make decisions and to watch your thinking and how to interrupt that and choose very intentionally how you want to react is the total secret sauce to having the experience, the human experience that you want to have in your life. Because you know, your kid wrecking a car is not a fun experience, right? But I get to decide how I'm going to experience that and how I'm going to react to that from a place of awareness and intention. And this is the same thing I'm teaching around how to choose your lifestyle in this podcast. So I'll just share with you really quick to make it clear what I mean by this. But, immediately when I got the call, I was very, judgy. I mean, duh. Our brain is just going to judge. It just does. It's going to want to blame. It wants to know all the details. It wants to figure out whose fault it is. How bad is it, And I watch my mind do that. It's always going to, and it's not necessarily bad. It's just what it does. And then I get to decide, how do I want to show up in this situation? Like, how do I want to parent in this situation? Because the goal is to steward my son through this experience, having learned, been wiser and smarter for it, right? And me having an emotional reaction to it and judging it and putting him on a defense and disconnecting from him is the absolute last thing that I want to do if the desired outcome is for him to grow from the experience and for me to grow from the experience, right? So I just watch my mind have a little freak out, jump to all its conclusions, have all its judgments, and then just ask myself, what is the right response to this for me? And truly what I want to do is to create a safe space to listen to my son. I want to ask him, what was this experience like for you, right? Like, what did you learn? What was it like for you? And be very compassionate in that, because the kid's beating himself up. He feels terrible, right? I don't need to add to that. There's plenty of self-judgment going on. And so I want to be able to support him compassionately through forgiving himself for that. And then just ask, like, well, what's next? Like, this has happened. It's not that it shouldn't be happening. It has happened. So what do we want to do next in order to be better off for this experience? And it was an awesome learning experience. I got to teach him so many things. And so did my husband around this mistake, right? It's part of the process. You're going to have accidents. There's going to be failures involved. And figuring out what went wrong and how you can prevent that is definitely a learning experience, but also how to forgive yourself, how to accept that you do make mistakes. And let me tell you what, my oldest son has always been strangely overconfident. He was born like this. Like, I remember him telling me when he was 4 years old how many times that he was right and that I was wrong that day. And so this was an awesome, humbling experience for him to say, hey, I don't know everything. I suck and I need to pay better attention and I need to be a beginner. And that was very humbling for him. It's not in his nature. And I'm glad he got to have that awareness and that aha as a young driver, right? Before something really unfortunate happens. So in all of that, there was so much goodness that came of it. Moving on, it's just stuff. It's just money, right? And I hope that that example is inspiring to you of why doing this work on yourself shows up in all areas of your life so that you can be who you want to be everywhere. Okay, so I want to tell you that one of my friends, I met him on a consult. He came to me through my podcast. His name is Jorge. He sent me a message the other day requesting a specific topic for this podcast. I love it when this happens because for me, making podcasts is kind of like making dinner. The hardest part can just be coming up with a great idea that gets me excited, right? And so if any of you out there have an idea of something that you would like me to talk about on this podcast, please send it to me. You can go on my website and send me a message there. You can grab my email off my website and send me an email. But I would so appreciate those amazing ideas dropping into my inbox because then the hardest part is over and I can just talk and just open my mouth and let all the answers flow out. And then you get to listen. So we can all thank Jorge right now for asking for this topic of how to know when it's time to get off your diabetes medications and how to do that, how to navigate that process with your doctor. And I'm just going to insert a really quick reminder here that this podcast is never meant to be used as medical advice or to replace the recommendations of your doctor or your medical team. So you should not listen to this podcast and then suddenly stop taking your medications without having that conversation with your medical provider. But as always, this podcast is meant to inspire and empower you with information and practical tips for application to understand your body, this disease of insulin resistance, and how to help your body heal so that you can live your life without diabetes, without chronic disease. So let's get into this subject because it's such a juicy one that many of you definitely want to know more about. And I am the perfect person to teach it to you, being both a clinical pharmacist and a diabetes reversal coach. I was the person who was sent the most complex medication-related cases in my primary care clinic when I was practicing. And most of my patients had type 2 diabetes. Kind of funny, huh? Not really. Knowing that now, diabetes is not fixable with medications, right? It makes sense why these people end up coming to see the pharmacist because they're not getting better over time. They're getting sicker. So by the time that they reached me, they were already on multiple meds for diabetes, plus they were on many more other medications for different medical conditions. Or sometimes they would be starting insulin injections and they just needed a lot of education around that because that can be quite complicated. So remember, I was working under the modern medical construct that type 2 diabetes is a chronic progressive disease that requires medications to, quote, control blood sugars, and that this is a condition that has no cure. Reversal isn't even acknowledged as a possible outcome, let alone taught to patients of how to accomplish this in the clinic. So this is the mindset that your medical providers are trained and practice with. And of course, if you don't understand or address the root cause, you're going to have to rely on these pharmaceutical band-aids to essentially cover up the symptom of high blood sugar, right? High blood sugar is like smoke from the fire. We just blow away the smoke and say there's no fire, but that's not actually true. We just can't see the smoke anymore, right? Okay, and we have dozens of medications that help us make the blood sugar look okay, even when that disease of insulin resistance is brewing underneath and getting worse. So studies actually show that no matter what drugs are selected, over time at about 10 years, most type 2 diabetics are uncontrolled regardless of the treatment regimen. So this alone demonstrates clearly that meds are not a long-term solution for this disease. And that is not to mention the side effects and the cost of taking these medications for a lifetime, right? But medications can be a good short-term strategy to control blood sugars, especially when they are very high, say like over 200 or 300 milligram per deciliter most of the time. And why is it important to control blood sugars this high relatively quickly? Well, because hyperglycemia, high blood sugars, cause damage or oxidative damage to your tissues, specifically the microvascular tissues that, when exposed to that oxidative damage over time, lead to complications like neuropathy, right? That's that nerve pain that can actually cause numbness, and that's what leads to amputations. Or retinopathy, which is when the vision is starting to get lost and can eventually cause complete blindness. And nephropathy, which is the loss of kidney filtration that eventually leads to dialysis. Plus, prolonged hyperglycemia doesn't feel good, right? The symptoms that people experience, like thirst and hunger and nighttime urination and blurred vision and fatigue, none of that feels good. And they're also at an increased risk of infection when blood sugars are high. So meds are an effective strategy to get those elevated sugars down and take the pressure off the situation while you learn what you need to know to get to the root cause and begin the healing process. Because believe me, meds pale in comparison to the power of lifestyle strategies to control blood sugar. And this is essentially the take-home message for this entire topic. The way you get off of diabetes meds is to gradually eliminate your need for them to control blood sugars. This is how your doctor would assess whether it is time or not to deprescribe your diabetes meds. Blood sugars that are normal or below normal, indicating that a person is over-medicated. Let me be clear. Even if you are a person who is on a lot of insulin for type 2 diabetes, you can still eliminate your need for some or all of it. I have helped dozens of people accomplish this, even those on 100 plus units of insulin per day. It just depends on how much insulin your body still is making and how sensitive you can make yourself to your own insulin supply. I do want to take a moment here and lovingly warn those of you on insulin of any kind or on oral medications that enhance natural insulin production, specifically a class of drugs called sulfonylureas that include glipizide, glyburide, glimepiride, and in other countries, glyclazide. If you are on insulin or any of these oral medications and you implement the lifestyle strategies I teach and will review briefly in this podcast, you will need to be very careful, okay, not to precipitate a low blood sugar event. That means you're going to need to be closely monitoring your blood sugars, ideally with a continuous glucose monitor, like a Dexcom or a Freestyle Libre, so that you can become aware that you are approaching a low blood sugar level under 70 milligrams or under 3.9 millimoles for those outside the US. Okay, so this is going to feel, when you're getting low, this is going to feel like shaking, increased heart rate, sweating, agitation, hunger. These are all overt signs of a low blood sugar. And they typically come on very quickly and feel very urgent. And they need to be treated with rapidly absorbed carbohydrate like sugar or flour immediately, followed by a balanced meal that has some fats and proteins in it so that you don't come crashing down right after you soar up. Okay? And then it will be important to notify your medical provider so that they can adjust your medications. Now, many of you are not on insulin or these other oral medications that cause a low or that can cause a low. So you aren't really at risk for a life-threatening hypoglycemic event. That bears repeating because so many of you have been instilled with an unwarranted fear of a low blood sugar by your doctors when it isn't really a thing. I encounter this often with my one-on-one coaching clients, and I have to undo that belief because it can be an obstacle to taking the necessary action to heal from insulin resistance. My clients can be afraid to fast or start getting uncomfortable when they are seeing their blood sugars under 100 or even in that 70 to 90 range, which are completely normal blood sugars, because someone scared the crap out of them about low blood sugar events. And it's just not a possibility that their metformin or their Jardiance or their Ozempic is going to cause a life-threatening low blood sugar. So if you're out there living your life in fear that you're going to go unconscious and not wake up, for example, because you have diabetes and you're on meds that are not insulin or one of those other orals that I mentioned by name in that class of sulfonylureas, you can let that terror go. It isn't serving you. And if you are out there eating every 2 to 3 hours because your dietitian told you that this is how you avoid a low blood sugar, you can stop doing that. It's so annoying how this misinformation affects people on the daily and can even do harm. Okay, so that's my rant on this podcast. So now let's look at how most people start and progress on medication therapy, because it's going to inform us of how it's usually deprescribed. So it's most common for type 2s to start on metformin at a low dose of like 500 to 1,000 milligrams a day, and then gradually go up or titrate up to 2,000 milligrams a day. Then any other med can be chosen to add to metformin. It could be an oral medication like Januvia or pioglitazone, or an injectable like Trulicity or Mounjaro. And it could also even be insulin if blood sugars are very high at diagnosis. Most commonly, that insulin is going to be a long-acting version of something like Lantus or Basaglar, given once a day. So, if you take notice of how the therapy was intensified or escalated for you, it would give you a clue of how therapy would probably be de-escalated for you. And it is also noteworthy to notice which meds were titrated up on their dosing, like metformin, like these injectables, Ozempic, Trulicity, like insulin, and like glipizide, because that can also be part of the de-escalation and might feel more comfortable to you, right? It can feel scary to suddenly stop a medication that you were convinced you needed to take for the rest of your life. Maybe going down on the dose gradually would feel safer, and in truth, would really just allow you to see that they're not really doing the heavy lifting. You are with your lifestyle strategies. And this just builds more confidence that you can control your blood sugars without medication. Okay, so let's quickly review those strategies that lower blood sugar, thereby lowering your insulin level. That allows you to liberate body fat and heal your insulin resistance. The most basic objective for changes to diet that manifest this outcome is need less insulin. So you're first going to remove the foods from your diet that require the most insulin to process. And these are the ones that spike you the highest and the fastest. Refined carbohydrates, daggone it, right? Like flour and sugar. Doing this one thing alone can dramatically lower your blood sugar and therefore your insulin requirement, right? We're going to work to need less insulin. Next, you will remove those other whole food carbohydrates that are spiking you and driving up your insulin levels. This can be different from person to person and also how they're being consumed. So we're talking about things like rice, potatoes, corn, fruit, sugar-containing dairy like milk, oats and grains and beans. Eating any of these on an empty stomach alone will make the spike sharper and higher. Eating them after some raw vegetables like a salad or with fats and proteins will slow down and blunt the spike. The goal, though, is to avoid spiking yourself more than, say, 30 points. So just cut out anything that's doing that or reduce your portions. The last two strategies that will decrease your insulin requirement are intermittent fasting and exercise. I have 2 whole podcasts on fasting that you can go back and listen to. But this tool is probably the most effective for decreasing the insulin requirement. It is a very powerful tool for liberating stored energy in the places that are causing insulin resistance, like the liver and the pancreas. And it speeds up the healing process. So if you are on insulin or one of those oral medications I have mentioned already that carry the risk of a low blood sugar, you're going to need to proceed with caution because fasting is so effective at lowering blood sugars. Now, I've recently learned a lot more about exercise and how it can reverse insulin resistance at the level of the muscle tissue and have a much deeper appreciation for the importance of this tool than I used to. I would like to actually do a whole episode on this topic soon because it's truly a game changer when you put it in the perspective of the disease process. So I want to share that in detail. For now, I'll just say that doing even brief bouts, like one brief bout of exercise that increases the heart rate significantly can translate to lower spikes and better baseline blood sugar averages for days. Try it, right? Like, what do you have to lose? What do you say? When you see the benefit, then I'll fill in the gap of what's actually happening at the cellular level that works. And then you'll know why it's so awesome. Okay, so that's a quick review of the lifestyle strategies that lower blood sugar by addressing the root cause of type 2 diabetes. And of course, you are all out there diligently applying all of this information. I know you are because I hear from you on the regular. Even this morning, a lovely lady named Kimberly sent me a direct message thanking me for all that she has learned on my podcast to help her lose 31 pounds and normalize her blood sugars after living with this disease for 6 years. Go, Kimberly. I am so proud of you. Now, how do you know when it's time to reduce your medications? When you start seeing blood sugars approaching low, remember that's under 70 milligrams or under 3.9 millimoles, you need to call your prescriber and have a conversation about adjusting your meds. You can justify doing this even if you are consistently seeing numbers under 100 or under 5.6 millimole. Now, most docs take a low blood sugar very seriously because, as we've already discussed, these are a medical emergency. Over 100,000 emergency department visits a year in the U.S. are directly attributed to medication-induced hypoglycemia. If your doctor does not respond to your report of a low or approaching low blood sugar, something is wrong, either with the way you're communicating it or their competence. So you can share with them that you are actively changing your lifestyle and would like instructions of how to independently adjust your doses or titrate off of them gradually. Your doctor should be able to give you clear instructions of how to do this. And that's it. That's how you and your prescriber discontinue diabetes medications. This works very similarly also to things like blood pressure meds, And many of you will see several meds outside of your diabetes meds need adjusting or discontinuing as you heal your body. And one last word of encouragement, don't be afraid to do this. I notice that we tend to overestimate the power of our meds and underestimate the power of how we eat and take care of our bodies. Slowly stopping medications only unmasks the true magnitude of your insulin resistance so that you can act in accordance. This is another big downside of relying on medications alone. Like, they cover up the disease and make us think we're doing okay when underneath we can actually be getting sicker because we're not aware of the full breadth of our disease. And that way it can be a distraction. So when we remove a medication, we get to see the truth, the work that needs to be done. And you don't have to if you don't want to. Isn't that amazing? You have free will to choose what you want to do. No one else knows better what's best for you than you. And I trust that. Okay, so I hope that you're feeling confident now about when to know and what to do when you think it's time to get off your meds. And I will see you on the very next episode. Remember that I love you and that I believe in you and that I'm here to support you. Okay, have an awesome rest of your day. Okay, don't leave yet. You're going to want to hear about this. If you love my podcast, if I'm the only sane voice you've found on this subject, if I've already helped you, you need to check out my online course. It's a start to finish, step-by-step video course that teaches you all the tools you need to know to beat this disease. You can find it on my website, sarahtownley.com. along with lots of other free tools that will make taking care of your diabetes so much easier. So get over there right now. See you there.